Hello and welcome to Politics War Room with James Carville, and I'm Al Hunt. This week, our guest is Brown University professor and author Marc Dunkelman. Now remember, we love taking your questions, so write into politicswarroom@gmail.com or send a tweet to @Politicon for next week's show. Now we're going to get to as many as we can, but don't forget to tell us where you're from. You can also text updates about what's next for Politicon and Politics War Room by signing up at Politicon.com. Now tell your friends about us and remind them to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And please check out the links to our sponsors, Magic Spoon, Miracle Made, and Fay Nutrition in our show notes. We thank you for supporting these sponsors. It really helps make this podcast happen. James, the establishment commentariat gave fairly high marks to Trump's State of the Union, declaring he was vigorous in full attack mode, touched all the bases of what he had done in those first 5 or 6 weeks. Even said he'd topped George Washington as the best first month in the history of every administration. Poor FDR just got left in the dust. I mean, all FDR did in his first month was close the banks, funnel out hundreds of millions of dollars of relief to a depressed country and get us off the gold standard. But that wasn't nearly as big as Trump. But I think whatever the short-term gains, and I'm not sure there will be, I think this is a bad speech. And it's not going to wear well. Not surprisingly, it's full of lies. Migration figures are wrong on claims that military enlistment suddenly started to go up when he was president. Ukraine, on Elon Musk finding canceling $8 billion federal contract. And the problem was, James, it was an $8 million federal contract. Now, maybe to Musk, that's just chump change. And those Social Security numbers were basically just made up. But lies are a way of life for Trump. And I hate to say this, but he rarely pays a price. He learned from Roy Cohn, the big lie works, never admit. But there are bigger problems. He offered no rationale, really, for those high tariffs he's imposed. Now, maybe this is just a bluff. And a couple days or a week or so, he'll remove them from Canada and Mexico, and he'll claim he got some kind of big victory. Well, he won't, but that's what he'll claim. But if they stay on and escalate, it's going to cause real pain, and he'll find other villains. But, if inflation creeps up and it goes beyond, far beyond what it was when he took office, I'm sorry, people are not going to be so forgiving. And finally, almost a throwaway line, he said, we're going to balance the budget. We're going to balance the budget with tax cuts that far exceed the $5 trillion extension of the 2017. He's got all kinds of new ones. And we're not going to touch entitlements or defense, but we're going to balance the budget. Now, at some point, even though he is a great practitioner of the big lie, at some point people will see what a fraud that is, I think.
Well, to some extent, we have to have a role in doing that. And I think the most, by the way, who in the establishment commentariat said
John
that was
Harris.
a good speech? Did somebody?
David Brooks.
Come on, John. And John Harris says, it's insane. It's insane. So truth doesn't matter anymore. I mean, okay. So I can't allow myself to get ahead of myself. Save the balance the budget clip, because when they come for the debt extension, when they come to pass the tax cuts, just remind people, of course, he has no intention whatsoever. He has accumulated more debt than any president in history. It hadn't been president but 4 years and 2 months now.
Right.
And he's number one. Number one in all of history. Since from George Washington on, he's number one. Got to be number one at something. So I guess issuing debt is one thing he's number one at. But just save that clip, play the long game.
And the tariffs are going to haunt him because they're either going to be phony, he's going to take them off, and it's going to reveal what a big bluffer he is, or if he's real about it, it's going to cause immeasurable pain, James. It just will. I mean, I don't listen to Democrats on that, or don't listen to Wall Street on that. Listen to Walmart. Listen to Costco. Listen to Target. Those are the people who say prices will surge if they stay on.
Well, first of all, he's going to start issuing exemptions. So this is a great shakedown. What better thing than to come in and say exempt us? All right. So let's see what's happened. But we know the way to get exempted from this is through money, and there's no person that thinks this is going to work. He's not going to be able to keep them on for very long. I mean, markets have responded horrifically to this, horrifically. And the problem here is we're going to be really tepid growth in the first quarter this year. The Atlanta Fed says negative. Our friend Roger Altman says that's too pessimistic, but even he is not very optimistic. And there's one way to kill inflation: have a recession, or better yet, a depression. That'll kill inflation quickly. That'll take care of it really
he
quickly.
Could pull them both off. Okay? He could have stagflation, James.
He could, but the forecasts are very pessimistic. The market is acting extremely pessimistically, and maybe they're wrong. I don't think they are. I think we're in for rough sailing. The tariffs are going to do nothing but make it rougher, and he's going to sell exemptions. I promise you. That's what this is all about.
James, let's turn to the Democrats. I thought, looking just at Tuesday night, it was the worst and the best of times, to borrow a leaf from Mr. Dickens. On the floor, Congressman Al Green of Texas made a fool of himself and his party by standing up and yelling and having to be evicted. We justifiably ridiculed those crazy Republicans like Joe Wilson and Marjorie Taylor Greene when they rudely yelled at Democratic presidents. So Green was an embarrassment. And those members not making that kind of noise, but holding up signs about Musk lies or save Medicaid, I mean, it's just sophomoric. So I don't think that was very impressive or very helpful. However, I have seen scores of State of the Union responses. It's a really difficult venue. Almost all are either forgettable or awful. Michigan freshman Senator Alyssa Slotkin gave one of the best I have ever seen or heard. She was measured. She was substantive. She focused on issues that matter to people. She channeled the Democrats' successful 2018 progressive as opposed to left-wing message. Maybe that's because she was elected to the House in 2018. She understands that message. We talk about a deep bench all the time. We usually talk about the governors, and I think that's really where the most important figures are. But she's one of a handful of senators that Chuck Schumer, whose forte is as an inside player, he should have Alyssa Slotkin and a handful of others outside all the time. She is a heavyweight, both substantively and as a communicator. James, I really was impressed.
Exceedingly impressed, and the talent we have, the high-end talent we have, is again, I keep repeating this, is utterly breathtaking. And she showed that. And I hope that they use her, Senator Warnock, Senator Murphy, Senator Gallego. I hope these are the kind of people, Democrats want to believe that everybody is equal or we're inclusive. And so everybody, when it turns to communicating the party's message and the image of the party, some people are just better than other people. Okay, it doesn't mean that they're better people. It doesn't mean that they're better legislators. It doesn't mean that they're more ethical. It just means they're better communicators. They know how to frame an issue. They know how to draw a contrast. Put the best out there. And it's, and it takes real, and since Schumer and Hakeem have got to say, look, people, these are the people, we want to do. And it's hard to do because everybody wants to be an individual. You're not the boss of me. I have an opinion. Fine. but there's some people that are just way better at doing it than other people, and get the people that are good at it out there. And we got to do that because in the thing that I believe, and I'm very passionate about this, I think the country is in the greatest peril it's been in since I've been born. That's 80 years ago. And I think that the foolishness of, I don't know, the cane or the auction paddles, I don't think that meets the moment. I think Slotkin met the moment. And I think that we have to treat this as what it is. This is a profound crisis that the United States is in right now. And the Democrats are kind of the only thing, and they don't have a lot of power, standing between us and the abyss. So we have to be clever in the way we do it. We have to be disciplined. And I know that everybody is saying, go out, do something, God damn it. I'm tired of just sitting there. And I saw actually somebody said, I got a new idea, pass something. Hey, I don't know how to tell late night hosts this. We can't pass gas. We don't have the votes. We can't even
determine if a bill comes to the floor, James.
Right. So let's be realistic as to what we have, and we got some things that are coming our way. The debt ceiling budget, the draconian cuts that are coming. In any Democrat, I make this right now. The Democratic caucus says anybody that says DOGE and doesn't say Elon Musk is DOGE has to pay $100. I mean, we have some things to use here, but you have to use them and not other things. And I'm going to be very vocal about being very disciplined, very determined. Very much, we got to meet the moment. And what we saw last night didn't meet the moment, except for Senator Slotkin, who, surprise, surprise, we got some all goddamn
well, I want
to
pick up on that, and I've done this before. It's a refrain, but there are, in Congress at least, there are indoor and there are outdoor politicians. Chuck Schumer is a good indoor politician. I think Nancy Pelosi was the greatest speaker, and certainly in my lifetime, who knows, maybe ever. I didn't cover Henry Clay. But she's just fair as an outside politician, a communicator on television, talking about what Trump is doing. But there are others who are so talented, whether it's Danny Goldman or Jamie Raskin on investigative stuff, Brendan Boyle on budget stuff. It used to be Mikey Sherrill on defense. She's running for governor now. But they've got that talent. Use it and understand what you can do. And what Pelosi did inside was far more important than anybody can do outside. And that's where you play to your strength.
Yeah, I think that Speaker Pelosi, later on, I think she was pretty good on TV because she had such gravitas. She had kind of
that
presence,
helps,
in tone. Yes, it helps. But it's so important that they identify the people who really do this well and try to put them front and center more and more. And it's difficult, and it's going to be hard in the caucus to do that. But it's just, I don't mean anything, but Senator Murphy is a better communicator than Senator Blumenthal. All right. Senator Warnock is a better communicator than Senator Ossoff. Okay, fine. Senator Gallego is a better communicator than Senator Kelly. Doesn't mean that they're better people or better senators or better anything. Right. It just, not right, doesn't mean that. It just means that we want to get the best possible communicators out there because the country is in peril. And we got to use everything at our disposal to try to hang on here till we can have another election. It's just where we are. It's depressing and it's all get out, but it is what it is.
One closing note, having criticized Al Green, who I think really was just made a fool of his party last night. I read in, I believe, the Bulwark, which I love, that on the other side of the aisle, Ronnie Jackson from Texas was standing up, yelling and screaming at Green. Now, Ronnie, you remember, was the White House physician who was nominated, I think, for veterans, and he couldn't get it because, among other things, they found that Ronnie sometimes was a little bit tipsy, had a little bit too much to drink on the job. And that's not something the White House physician should do. I don't know. Maybe the standards are different for a member of the House, but Ronnie, were you feeling good cheer last night when you were yelling and screaming across the aisle?
Well, there's a long history of people being
Right.
drunk after state. They just called him the candy man when he was a White House physician because he handed out, drugs like they were candy. I mean, there's so many of these people. The Marjorie Taylor Greene's boyfriend being allowed to shout at Zelensky. We know how just horrific these people are, and the best way to do that is contrast our
Yep,
best with their
I
worst.
agree. We'll have lots more on all of this ahead.
Start your day with a delicious bowl of Magic Spoon. It's great. I always say it's good to start your day. It's also good during the day. And these guys just keep up coming with more new flavors, more new everything. And I don't know who the flavor profilist is, but whoever she or he is, they do a hell of a job.
Yeah, you all out there know we are big fans of Magic Spoon's high protein cereal, and we now have exciting news. Magic Spoon has turned their super popular high protein cereal into high protein treats that are light, crispy, and taste just like classic crunchy cereal bars. Magic Spoon's treats are delicious and have become our favorite on the go snack. James loves them after a run, and he'll even double down with a bowl of cereal while he's working. And I think he probably sneaks some of those snacks during the day, too. But the good news is, James, you may be able to add in some more variety because Magic Spoon is also launching a brand new high protein granola, true to the Magic Spoon promise. Yeah, I knew you'd be excited.
Yeah.
I mean, James, it is packed with protein and is so crunchy and sweet. It's perfect for breakfast or a snack at any time of the day, especially as a delicious pre workout meal. Now, let's get into the macros, as we call them. Magic Spoon's high protein treats are crispy, crunchy, airy, and an easy way to get 12 grams of protein on the go. They come in mouth-watering flavors like marshmallow, chocolate peanut butter, and dark chocolate. Now, if you know me, you'll know I'm going for that chocolate peanut butter every time, but it's up to you. You have great choices. Then Magic Spoon's brand new granola packs a punch with 13 grams of protein and zero added sugar. They come in the delicious flavors honey, almond, and peanut butter. The crunch is so satisfying, and it feels great knowing that we're getting a big serving of protein and staying carb conscious while getting to enjoy Magic Spoon's great taste. Now, right now, we have a deal for you. Get $5 off your next order at magicspoon.com/warroom or look for Magic Spoon on Amazon or in your nearest grocery store. That's magicspoon.com/warroom for $5 off. The link is in our show notes. Hey, James, our guest is Marc Dunkelman, a Brown University fellow, an author, a former Washington policy maven, and the author of the much acclaimed Why Nothing Worked: How Excessive Regulations the Progressives have pushed have stymied growth and progress. Marc, I just want to start off by saying you're at Brown. I hope you're not a regular at the Brown Faculty Lounge because James has really railed against the Brown Faculty Lounge for the last 2 years. So I hope you're not one of those Brown Faculty Lounge guys.
Listen, good soup is good soup. I don't know what to tell you.
Marc, describe why so much. You describe this in your book, why so much doesn't work, and suggest we're no longer capable of building big things like we used to. Why is that, and what do you do about it?
Well, there was a long period of time where America could build big things. We did lots of big things. We did the Tennessee Valley Authority. We did the highway program. We did NASA. We did huge, big projects because we empowered government, in many cases, to make big decisions. And then we woke up in the 1960s, 1970s to discover that some of the people making those decisions weren't on the up and up. They weren't doing a good job. They'd made bad decisions. They'd driven highways through urban areas. They'd done slum clearance. They'd poured pesticides on crops so that people were having birth defects. They were a scourge. And so for the last 50 years or so, in this strange way, the party of government, the Democrats, have been trying to put guardrails around government itself. And so we've got this massive pileup of guardrails that make it impossible to build housing in places that need more units, make it impossible to do high-speed rail, even as Europe and Asia are speeding ahead, make it impossible for us to take advantage of all these clean energy innovations that we've got, wind, solar, hydro, like you name it. The problem here isn't that we don't have the technology, it's that we can't get the permits to get the transmission lines from the places that the power is generated to the places where it'll be used. So we could have abundant stuff on all these fronts, and we just can't get there because of stuff that we progressives have done to ourselves.
Well, is the answer the Trump-Musk approach?
No, that obviously not.
Well, tell us why.
That's a disaster. That is taking a sledgehammer to a whole system, and it's going to leave us more broken than it is fixed. There are places, probably, in the Pentagon, where we could use some of Trump and his minions, so that we could have weapon systems come in on time and on budget for the first time in decades. But on this, generally, no. Now, this is sort of an interesting and a nuanced point. Back in the day, when you had these powerful figures, these power brokers, making big decisions about where the highway was going to go and where the transmission lines were going to be strung and how all these things were going to work, we had in this country what was really an establishment. And I use that in quotes, the establishment. That's a term that people used. And it meant that, there's this old phrase in politics, you can't fight City Hall. And the reason that you couldn't fight City Hall wasn't because you couldn't unseat an incumbent mayor. Everyone could. Their mayors came and went. But that there was this notion that there was this powerful group of people sitting behind the mayor who didn't change. And they got to choose which projects were done and where things went and how things went. And they were lawyers and they were businessmen and they were property owners and developers. They were the establishment. And all these rules that we've created since the establishment was sort of exposed for what it is are designed to force those people to have to run certain gauntlets before they can get the stuff they want done. So if you're going to build the highway or you're going to build the rail line or you're going to build the transmission line, you got to get approvals on the environment, on the endangered species, on how it's going to affect how it's going to affect the porpoises and the orchids and all the stuff. And the people that Trump is firing are the people that make sure that we can get past those gauntlets. He's not actually eliminating the gauntlets. It's not making it so that you can do the transmission line faster or build the high-speed rail line faster. He's eliminating the people who are the only ones capable of moving those things even a little bit. The challenge here is to lower the gauntlets themselves and then let these people make the decisions that have to be made and make the trade-offs. Somebody's house is going to have to be moved so that we can build the high-speed rail line. Somebody's neighborhood is going to get cut through if you're going to have a straight line that allows for a high-speed rail. Like, these are hard decisions we have to make. And the problem is, on the whole, government has been told, don't make these decisions expeditiously. And that's because we, on the left, have been afraid that government's going to make the wrong decisions.
Well, Mark, the classic model for this in many ways was Robert Moses in New York well over a half century ago. He was a dominant figure. He transformed the region with highways, superhighways, bridges, tunnels. It just, any place you go up there is a Robert Moses legacy. Critics, Robert Caro and others, say at an unacceptable price that he hurt many lower income citizens, changed neighborhoods. What's your assessment of what lesson we should take from Robert Moses?
Well, Robert Moses is at one end of a spectrum where you've got one character who can make these decisions at his own discretion, however he likes. he's in control. And that's one model. And it clearly, there's some reassessments of Moses today, but let's accept on face value Robert Caro's indictment, which is that this guy was a power-hungry maniac, and that when power corrupts, and that he did terrible damage to the city. That's the downsides of all the things that he did. Let's accept that those happened without any of the upsides. Fair enough. At the other end of the spectrum is a system in which everyone has a veto over anything you do. These are the two ends, and they're both lousy. You don't want to have a system where one guy can make these decisions and nobody can do anything about it. That's from the one with Robert Moses. You don't want to have a system where anybody who's pissed off that that their garden is going to be 100 centimeters closer to a street can shut down the thing that's going to help the whole county bypass a big traffic problem. Right? You need to have some balance. So my solution is to give everyone a voice and no one a veto. And it seems to me like that's a doable thing. We've done it in this country before, and we should do it again.
James.
Well, I think your book is very important, and I've been sending it to the potential presidential candidates in 2028, because I do think there's a great frustration. My wife and I I'll ramble a little bit, but we went to Japan last April, and we took when you were a kid and you had rich friends and you go to their house and you just kind of look and say, why can't we have nice things? Okay, why do they have this kind of nice china and silverware? And I was sitting there and sitting on that bullet train, and why can't we have nice things? What? I mean, it's raggedy, and so to make that overall general point, I don't think we should sell the benefits of building things. All right, we know there's a cost. Sometimes we build them in the wrong places. Some of them can be expensive, but when we talk about climate, we like to tell people, I live in the most climate fragile city in the country, probably. And we don't talk about mitigation. Okay, if I read somebody's climate action plan and mitigation is not in it, you're not serious. I don't give a shit what you say. You don't understand what's going on. And I think when you're selling this, you should talk about the real upsides of it. That's my general point. My favorite example, I'll get you to respond to it, is it took us 4 years longer than we should. We built a new airport. Hurricane, I forgot the name, back in 2017. The eye goes 10 miles west of the New Orleans airport. It opens the next day. The Newark airport, as a result of rainfall from the same storm, closed for 3 days. That's a payoff. If you build shit right, it can work.
I mean, you're absolutely right. The question in my mind in all these cases is, who gets to decide which shit we do, right? Like the problem at the moment is that we've gone from a place where one person could decide to do whatever they wanted to do, and no one could say no, to a situation where even when everyone says yes, we can't get it done because it's not done exactly the way that one person wants to get it done. And that's just a sea change. And it's a strange thing because we Democrats, we see ourselves as the party of government. Like, that's our self-perception. In fact, if you were to travel to another country and ask about the political situation, not understanding anything, you'd ask which is the party of the left and which is the party of the right. And the party of the left would be the party of government, and the party of the right would be the party of free enterprise. That would be the way we understood it. But here we are, Democrats, the party of government, essentially rendering the tool that we want to use to improve people's lives incompetent. We've been doing it for 50 years. It's not for bad intentions. It's from not understanding that there's this inherent tension in our own ideology. We simultaneously want to build up government power, and we simultaneously, at the same time, we want to push it down to ordinary people. And these two things are in tension. And this is not an issue where one is the right answer and one's the wrong. It's that we need to have some balance of the two. We need some situation, some some system that allows you to build things when it's in the public interest and doesn't allow you to do terrible things at the same time. There's this. I don't watch a lot of drag racing. Some people do. I think it's probably a lot of fun to watch. There's this thing they call in drag racing, which is called warming the tires. Maybe you know about this.
I do. They did do it in NASCAR too. You go around and they get them.
Right, but it's where you press the accelerator and the brake at the same time, and you get all this plume of smoke behind you, and the tires warm up, but you don't go anywhere. So what do we do during the Biden administration? That's what we did. We poured more and more money into the system to do more and more stuff without ever releasing the brake, which are all these regulations that have built up all these years. And so, our candidates went around talking about how much money we spent on things, but then at the end of the day, we spent $5 billion or devoted $5 billion to building EV chargers in the places where they wouldn't go, so that we could get people to buy electric cars and not be afraid that they're going to get caught without charge in the middle of the boondocks. And there were 3 years later, only 58 had been built. That's not the fault of any person. The Biden administration did everything they could. The federal government, the state government, the local government, no one's got the leverage to get the things built. So that's the thing we got to be focused on. If we're going to spend the money, let's get it out so people can feel the difference.
So a better example might be when an airplane takes off, they put the brakes on and they ram the engine up high, and then they release the brakes, and it gives them more thrust. I don't know what the physics of it is, but holding the brakes is something that's it's a good. My favorite part of the book and my favorite story, and share it with is the story of Amazon in Queens. Okay, just tell us that story, because it's really worth people hearing.
Yeah, it's a long story, so let me see if I can do it justice for a podcast.
Right.
Back when Robert Moses was empowered, he had the power over urban renewal, which meant that he could take down whole blocks of New York City that he thought were slums. People were living there, but he took the blocks down and they were just rubble, whole blocks, whole neighborhoods. And when Rockefeller became governor, Nelson Rockefeller, he was real frustrated that the buildings that Moses had intended to build there, which would be big glass towers, big housing developments, never got built. So he decides he's going to have the state government do it himself. And they're going to build these big, state subsidized housing developments. He appoints a guy named Ed Logue to do it. Ed Logue is just going to build everywhere. And he does. He just starts a gazillion projects all over the state.
Came from Boston.
Logue gets his start in New Haven, goes to Boston, builds Government Center, and then Rockefeller lures him away from Massachusetts after I think he loses a mayoral campaign.
He lost to Kevin White, yes.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And comes, and he's going to become the housing czar in New York City, New York State. And what happens is Logue starts spending money beyond what the state can do. So if that's the beginning, that's the leading edge of the fiscal crisis. Everyone remembers New York City. It was a sort of a crazy time. It looked like the whole state was going to go bankrupt and worse. And there's a the New York Daily News famous headline that says Ford to City drop dead. Right, the city's going to go bankrupt and the federal government's not going to help. And so in the wake of this disaster, the state government creates something called the Public Authorities Control Board. It seemed totally reasonable at the time. If the governor's office and the state government was going to be incompetent and spend more than they had and get the state to the point where it might go bankrupt, they were going to have a veto power from the state legislature to fix it. And so they create this Public Authorities Control Board that means that the Speaker of the State Assembly and the President of the State Senate can veto any big capital expenditure, which at the time didn't mean anything because nobody was investing in New York in the 70s or 80s. The place looked like it was going downhill. Get to the 1990s, and Shelley Silver, who was the Assembly Speaker and would die in jail having been convicted of corruption, realizes he's got this power, and he uses this veto, this legislative veto, to kill a whole bunch of things. He'd kill a redo of Penn Station in New York City. Mike Bloomberg was the mayor of New York City. He wanted to do the Olympics there. He wanted to have a stadium on the west side, and Shelley Silver killed that, which killed the Olympic bid. And then finally, after Shelley Silver's gone, this Public Authorities Control Board still exists. And there's a deal to bring Amazon's second headquarters to Queens. And everyone's excited about it. Mayor de Blasio, Governor Cuomo, who hated each other, did this thing where they sat together at a table to announce that Amazon is going to invest billions and billions of dollars in Queens. Everyone's excited about it. There are going to be new jobs, new developments, all sorts of stuff. And the local state assemblyman realizes that if he doesn't get this thing killed, he'll get primary. So he's able to use this legislative veto from the Public Authorities Control Board to do the whole thing. He vetoes the whole thing, and Amazon packs up, heads down to Washington instead. It's sort of this remarkable moment where you've got almost everyone bought into the notion that we're going to do this big development. It's going to be great for the city. There could be more jobs, more housing, more development. Money's going to pour into the state coffers from taxes. Like, it's just a win-win-win. But there's one person with a completely parochial interest for whom it's not expedient, for whom it's a real political danger, and so he vetoes the thing, and New York loses the whole thing. Now, there are legitimate arguments about whether Amazon in Queens was going to be good. Certainly, if you lived in one of the apartment buildings where people lived, where they were going to knock down to put up a tower for Amazon, like, that's a bummer. And if you are living in a subsidized apartment and you're worried that when the neighborhood turns over, that you're not going to be able to find something as good in another part of New York City, that's a bummer. But the question is, who gets to decide what's good for the whole of New York City, for the whole of the Northeast, for all of Queens, for commerce in the United States? Like, who gets to decide? Is it this one person who represents this little district, or is it the mayor and the governor and people who generally don't agree, but who've come together on this thing? And you see this pattern all over the country. One little objection makes it impossible to do a big thing. It's just not a way to do business. And it answers James's question: why can't we have nice things? Like, they've figured out ways to get through that problem in other places in the world. And here, there are just too many veto points in the system.
Alan Turner, just a comment to get you to respond to it. The progressive size is their own enemy. When I read a story that they didn't like Costco, I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? This is the most democratic company that since ever existed. It pays their people $20 an hour. It has the most diverse clientele of the one in New Orleans is one of the most diverse places in the world. Why do we hate Costco? Okay, and I think it was Amazon that if it's big, it has to be bad. I think that's a rule of modern progressive thought. Size itself can be the enemy.
I think that since the 60s and 70s, when we woke up, progressivism built the big institutions in this country. We built the Tennessee Valley Authority, which connected all these poor farmers. We did rural electrification. We did, everyone gives Eisenhower credit for the highway system. That was FDR's idea. We did Medicare. We did Medicaid. We did Social Security. You name it. We built all these big institutions. We built the military that won the Second World War. We did all these things. And then we saw in the 60s and 70s that power itself corrupted. And that became the narrative. What Walter Lippmann, the great journalist, said was the story in our heads was that power corrupts. And you saw it in Vietnam, and you saw it in the military industrial complex, and you saw it in urban renewal, all these things. And to your point, James, you're exactly right. We developed a second narrative in our heads, which was that power itself is bad. So you look at any situation and you tell a progressive who has power and who has less power, and they'll tell you who's good and who's bad without looking at the merits of what it is. That's not the historic. That's progressivism the last 40, 50 years. That's not progressivism writ large. And it's not the one and true progressivism. We used to, you look at some of the great heroes of our movement, and they are people that did big things. And so the irony is that you're exactly right. We are our own worst enemy. You had this great piece in the New York Times the other day sort of telling Democrats that, let Trump, be hoisted on his own petard. Sit back, let him try to govern, and let's see what happens. And I think that's fair enough advice. I also think that we should be using that time when he's dominating the news to be thinking about what we did wrong. We need to have like a sort of a come to Jesus moment with ourselves, where we say to ourselves, look, we've got these two ideas in our heads. We've got this idea that we're going to empower government to do big things, and we are afraid of government. Have we balanced these two things in the right way? Because I think that for the most part, if you talk to sort of young progressive activists, they are more fearful of government. They see it more of as a scourge because it's big and powerful than they do as an opportunity. And so we got to get out of our own way. And if we do get out of our own way, if we start showing people that government can produce things, so we can, the government can get out of the way of housing developers who want to make affordable units, that we can get out of the way so that we can build high-speed rail, that we can take advantage of all these clean energy stuff. If it's not just Democrats talking about how much money they're spending, but Democrats actually being at ribbon cuttings of stuff that people want, then I think that we don't drive people into the arms of MAGAism and populism and Trumpism. Like, people are going to a strong man, right, in Trump, that they see that him as a strong man because they think that progressivism isn't delivering for them. And like, that's on us. We got to deliver. We got to have a good product if we're going to actually make a sale.
Albert, you think very good. Go ahead, Albert.
We'll wrap this up, but let me just ask you this before we go. Your critique certainly applies to many state and local governments. Is it equally true for the federal government?
I mean, of course, it's you see it everywhere. Every time we've been in power over the last 50 years, our abiding effort has been to somehow protect people who are being hurt by big institutions, including the government. So we've created all sorts of regulations. And what's so interesting to me in the process of writing this book is that you talk to people in energy, or you talk to people in transportation, or you talk to people in housing, or you talk to people in whatever field, they all feel as though government is a burden uniquely to their world, right?
Right.
That there's a specific law that affects energy transmission lines, or there's a specific law that applies to whether you can drive a train line through a greenery, whatever it is. And everyone thinks that they've got some special thing. The thing that my book is trying to do is to say all these are connected. These are all part of the same story. It's the federal level, the local level, the state level, you name it. We're so bought into the narrative that government is going to do abusive things that we have rendered government incompetent, and nobody wants to be for a party that's selling an incompetent product.
Good point. James, you want to wrap this up?
Right, yeah, I do. And so what I would say, Mark, if the progressives think that power is corrupt and power is dangerous, now you got a lack of power. How does that feel? The alternative to power is a lack of power. And good. Now, that really worked well. And I'll just say this. The single most important thing you can do is win the election. Have the argument later, all right? Push society to new bounds in a way that we talk to each other, the way we do things. But if you don't win the election and you don't have power, you got nothing. You just got shit. And that's where we are today. And I think that there's always been, I was stunned when I started doing national campaigns and started meeting the early progressives. They would rather lose, and people like this, and Albert knows people like this. They would rather lose and feel good about themselves than have to compromise something and win an election. That's so tawdry. We're so pure. And I think that shit has built up. I've seen it over my career. When somebody come to me and they say, so-and-so's in here from the activist community, I said, don't let that son of a bitch within 100 yards of me. Okay, just go outside and tell him yes and anything she wants or he wants. And I think some of us are to blame for this, to talk about how ethical we are and how bad power is.
I agree with a lot of that. I also think, the upside of that, James, is that it means that rather than us sitting here screaming about what Trump's doing, this and that, and trying to fight him on every front and taking every bait that he throws for us, it means that we ought to spend some more time looking at ourselves. Like to your point, we like this is something we can solve for ourselves if we come up with a governing agenda that works. And so stop. You know, I understand that it's cathartic to scream about how terrible Trump is. This book is meant to say, let's take a moment, take a breath, look at ourselves, come up with something that appeals to people so that we can win elections and actually govern in a way
I think that's,
give them faith that we can win.
Mark, that's essential, but that evolves. And the thinking ought to begin now, the planning ought to begin now. But the prime focus, I would argue, for Democrats right now is to try to deal with the existential threat that America faces like we haven't faced in my lifetime. And I think ultimately you hope to govern and you need to come up with the sorts of things you're talking about. But I really, I blanch a little bit at these critiques who want to spend most of their time talking about what's wrong with the Democrats, you know, when the country's being stolen from us.
I guess so. I don't know what it gets you to scream endlessly about Trump. Like we've been trying.
Well, you have to challenge him. You have to bring legal suits. You have to expose it. I mean, otherwise you're Germany, 1934.
Well, also, Al, to be fair, I think what he's saying, I hope you're involved in the next presidential campaign talking about this.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying you shouldn't have issues.
I know you're not. I agree.
You don't just say, "Well, let Trump be Trump."
I'm not saying you don't fight where you can. I'm saying we spend our time hysterically talking about the end of democracy all the time, and then we lose. Like that's a lousy strategy. I'd like us to have a strategy where we're offering people something that they want to buy, and you know democracy doesn't fall apart when democratic government is working well and delivering for people. It falls apart when it feels like the government is not working. It's not delivering. We don't have enough housing. We can't take advantage of clean energy. People are paying more for less.
Well, you have certainly added to this conversation. The book is
Absolutely.
Why Nothing Works. Marc Dunkelman, you've been a great guest. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks.
Thank you, man. And why can't we have nice things? Okay. Sleep clean and comfortable with Miracle Sheets. I'll tell you what, a good night's sleep is critical, and Miracle Sheets is something that really works. I will say this, it is an indispensable tool in what it takes to put a good night's sleep. And you see this all the time. Everybody is now caught on to the fact that sleep is really determinative. And, you know, I see these things, 5 secrets to getting a good night's sleep. I think most of them are bullshit. The thing that you're going to interact with when you're sleeping are sheets. There's just no way to get around it. All right, that's it. And that's the most important element you can have, is to be comfortable. And this gives you comfort because everybody likes to sleep, you know, with some blankets, you know, when it's a little bit cool. I believe that. I'd rather sleep in the cold than sleep in the hot.
Well, sleeping at the right temperature is a critical way to feel rested the next day. If you wake up too hot or too cold, we highly recommend you check out Miracle Made bed sheets. Miracle Made sheets are inspired by NASA and use silver-infused thermoregulating fabrics so you can sleep at the perfect temperature all night long, no matter how high the heater is set. Plus, the silver lining prevents 99.7% of bacterial growth, which means Miracle Sheets require 3 times less laundry because they stay clean and fresh 3 times longer. Your bed will feel freshly made every night. Stop sleeping on bacteria that can clog your pores and cause breakouts and acne. Sleep clean with Miracle instead. Trust us, with no more gross odors, life is a whole lot better for your household. The NASA-inspired temperature-regulating silver-infused fabrics truly give you the maximum comfort in any weather. And they make pillowcases and comforters too. So join us in getting better sleep every night. Not only are Miracle Sheets luxuriously comfortable, they don't have the high price tag of other luxury brands. Miracle sheets feel nicer than bed sheets used by some 5-star hotels, so it's a vacation every time you get in bed. Upgrade your sleep this year. Go to trymiracle.com/war room to try Miracle Made sheets today. Whether you're buying them for yourself or as a gift for a loved one, if you order today, you can save over 40%. And if you use our promo code War Room at checkout, you'll get a free 3-piece towel set and save an extra 20%. Now, Miracle is so confident in their product that it's backed with a 30-day money-back guarantee. So that means if you're not 100% satisfied, you'll get a full refund. Now, upgrade your sleep with Miracle Made. Go to trymiracle.com/war room and use the code War Room to claim your free 3-piece towel set and save over 40% off again. That's trymiracle.com/war room to treat yourself. Thank you, Miracle Made, for sponsoring this episode, and please look for the link in our show notes. Now, for the outrage of the week. Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, once intimated that since he didn't have much money, he'd spend the night in his office. Well, ProPublica has reported he found a better deal, a 2-bedroom apartment in a luxurious $3.7 million townhouse. It's owned by a Republican donor and run by an evangelical pastor and lobbyist. Now, Johnson didn't reveal this, so we have to thank ProPublica, nor will he tell us what he's paying. But ProPublica reports that sort of arrangement, a luxurious unit like that, could go for as much as $7,000 a month. It's a violation of House rules to take a discount on rent, especially from a lobbyist. So, Speaker Johnson, are you violating House rules? If not, would you please tell us and put out publicly what you're paying in rent for this luxury unit?
Good point. Absolutely. He's only the Speaker of the House. Why should he follow the ethics rules? Of course, we know he's a gigantic liar. And now, he's a rule breaker. This is so typical of who they are. The story I thought was stunning. I'm so glad you brought it up. I'll get to my outrage, but just one thing of praise here, and that's for Harry Connick Jr., who founded a parade in Mardi Gras called Orpheus. It runs on Monday night. Most people think it's the most colorful and best floats of any of the Mardi Gras crews, but that's up for debate. But they did something utterly brilliant. For their queen, they had a drag queen. That's the best you can do. When you started talking about that, you want to mock these people, understand, mockery is the best thing. So the queen of Orpheus was a drag queen. My hats off to Orpheus. for my outrage. So some of the things that happen, they're so unbelievable, you don't really believe they happen. If you remember in the sitcoms and back in the 50s and 60s, there was always this kind of delayed moment where somebody would digest what was just said. It took you a second, couple of 3 seconds to digest it. All right. Brooke Rollins, and I'm sorry, that's her name. She's the Secretary of Agriculture, was asked about high egg prices and that Trump was going to get egg prices down. And of course, no such thing has happened. In fact, egg prices have gone up. And she said, and I swear I'm not making it up. All right, I want you to sit down. If you hadn't heard this, you might come out of your chair. If you have a weak heart, you might want to just take a deep breath and relax. Her answer was, people need to raise chickens in their backyard. That's right. She actually said that in response to why haven't they done anything about high egg prices, of which, of course, they promised they were going to do from day one. The answer is raise chickens in your backyard. I think this stuff is so unbelievable, we just can't process it. But the chicken coop ought to be the symbol of the opposition.
Yeah.
Find the right diet plan for you with Fay Nutrition. Well, look, what that's explaining, you're all what you eat. And a competent dietitian or somebody that spends their time studying that can give you what's good for you, what's healthy, tastes good. It'd give you some real good advice. But of course, the problem is traditionally you had to go and get an appointment and wait outside in the waiting room. Then you had to go and sit time with them and whatever. This cuts out every middleman, everything you can, and you got really professional, qualified help right there. We have obesity problems. We have problems with diabetes. We can't tell you how poor diet and poor nutrition has harmed the United States. And the more people use this, the better off you're going to be.
Yeah. And now is the perfect time to upgrade relationships with food, which is why we're partnering with Fay Nutrition. Now think about it. What are you doing to improve your dietary habits? Fay can help you find the answer. It's a revolutionary platform that connects you with your own personal registered dietitian, making expert nutrition guidance accessible and affordable. So whether you're looking for help losing weight, improving your general health, or managing a health condition, Fay has a dietitian right for you. The best part is that all dietitians on Fay accept insurance, with over 700 insurance plans accepted. So you'll likely pay $0 out of pocket. I know for a fact that we all find any excuse to avoid spending money, even when it's for a great cause like getting healthier. But when you find out that insurance can help you get the dietary guidance you need, really the guidance you need, none of us have an excuse. We're tired of one size fits all diet plans and basic nutrition advice. But the dietitians on Fay work with you one on one to create a customized program tailored specifically to your needs. It's much more than just a diet plan. Their dietitians focus on clinically proven methods to improve your relationships with food and instill positive long term habits. We're proud to have them as a sponsor because we've heard about so many people using Fay to transform their health and quality of life. Most importantly, it works. It really works. 93% of Fay clients reported an improved relationship with food. 93%. And 85% reached their target weight. A third party study showed that clients lost 2.9 times more weight working with a dietitian through Fay compared to comparable weight loss programs. So don't wait. Achieve lasting results with the help of a registered dietitian through Fay. Listeners of Politics War Room can qualify to see a registered dietitian for as little as no dollars by visiting faynutrition.com/war room. That's faynutrition.com/war room. One last time. That's FAY nutrition.com/war room. Make sure you use our URL so they know we sent you. The link is in our show notes. Now, for our listener questions, which are great as always. We've got a big California contingent this week, but we start off with Teresa in Monterey, who asked, James, is there any hope that we can put Humpty Dumpty together again when the Trump administration is finished dismantling our government?
Well, first of all, I'm coming to Monterey, I think, in April at the Panetta Institute. So that's one of the great places in the country, man. It's just stunning. That whole part of California is beautiful. I don't know. Okay, I have to be honest. This is such a perilous time that we live in, and I think we'll be fine, but we just gotta try to keep this grand experiment going, and it's under threat every day. So we all have to do our part to get to 2028. That's my general view, but I'm not wildly optimistic about anything right now.
Well, I think that's right, Teresa. The damages are going to be extraordinary, and they're going to take a while to rebuild. It's not going to be if you elect a Democrat in 2029, suddenly you can reverse things. It'll be years. We're going to stay in California and stay in a great place, Santa Monica. John
All right.
says, how far will Senate Republicans like John Cornyn and Tom Tillis go in accepting Trump's abandonment of Ukraine and embrace of Putin? Well, they will complain vociferously about 3:30 in the morning when no one can hear them because they're afraid of him and they're afraid what he'll do. I think, frankly, one of the very few Republicans who I think will be outspoken on this will be Mitch McConnell. He's not running again, so it's easy. I was kind of stunned after that Oval Office meeting in which the president and Vance was a setup. The whole thing was set up. They brought the cameras in. They brought him in and decided to go after Zelensky. And Lindsey Graham, who was supposedly a big Ukraine supporter, came out and said it was all basically Zelensky's fault. As I say, I don't think of him as Lindsey Graham. I go back to Christopher Buckley's book and think of him every time I see him as Squiggly Tea Biscuit. But the amount of courage in the Republican Party today to stand up to Trump can be measured in a teaspoon and have some space left over.
You know, first of all, Lindsey Graham is a joke. It's become a comical figure. I'll give you two that surprised me a little. And I think Ukraine is causing some real discomfort in some quarters of the Republican Party. It is. And Roger Wicker, Republican of Mississippi, and James Lankford, who's been on this show, Republican of Oklahoma, both expressed some dissatisfaction. And it takes a lot of guts. I mean, I saw John Thune last night. You know, he looked ill over the tariffs, and he said, "Oh, you know, we will get." You know, he was so scared because these farmers in South Dakota are killing him, and they'll get killed by this. But there are, as you know, I've been very skeptical about anything in courage in that party. But there are some minor pea shoots here. Let's see how big they grow. But the tariff stuff is causing them great angst. The Ukraine stuff is causing them great internal angst. And they're just hoping it goes away. Probably won't.
Yeah. Howard. We're going to move to the East Coast in the Berkshires. And Massachusetts wants to know, how should we continue to support Democrats, James?
That's a very good question. All right. So start when you see a Democrat do a smart thing. Tell them, call the congressional office, Senate office, and say, I really saw what so-and-so did, and I really agree with that. That's
call
very,
Elizabeth
very
Slotkin
critical.
Today.
Yeah, call Elizabeth Slotkin. You say, "Atta girl," okay, as opposed to don't call Al Green. Okay, call Elizabeth Slotkin. That kind of stuff is important. And promote people who are good communicators. Promote people who can express the values of the party. And you got to have faith in our congressional leadership. I think that they're working hard on a plan to how to be the most effective opposition it can be. When the opposition is effective, let them know you like it. When it's ineffective, let them know you don't like it. You got power, dude. Use it.
Yeah, I completely agree on that. We're going to go to the Midwest now, and Mark in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. What is the job of the CIA in the Trump era? John Ratcliffe is not as bad as some of the other appointments, but he's not in the tradition of great CIA directors. He's a politician, I think, primarily. And I think the agency will resist being used for political purposes, but Trump will demand it. And so I worry. I just worry. I think whatever criticisms, justifiable, many have been, of Langley in the past, I think when you start using the CIA for political purposes, it hurts the country. And that's what Trump does.
Yeah. Also, where's the director of national intelligence in this pecking order, and who could not be any more catastrophic?
Right.
I mean, if on a scale of 1 to 10, Ratcliffe is a 3, the DNI director is a -50. Make that point.
FBI director's right up there with her too.
Go. Might be ahead, and the deputy director. Don't forget.
Oh, the talk show host, right?
Yeah.
James, there's hope for us, right? Huh?
Yeah, I'm telling you, man. Oh,
Can you imagine the Republicans if the Democrats won and they appointed James Carville or Al Hunt to be deputy director of anything? Oh my God! Hey, we have
maybe they make us director of technology.
I got to stop laughing about that one. We're going to go back to the coast. Redwood City, Matt says, is trying to rope-a-dope, which is the old Muhammad Ali technique. The Republicans just giving up while they destroy the country.
Well, I don't think Muhammad Ali gave up. You might ask George Foreman when that fight was over if Muhammad Ali gave up.
Right.
All right. So there's this little charge of the light brigade. God damn it, here we stand. We can do no other. I want action. I want action now. I understand that impulse. But we need clever, smart action. And we got to pick our fights. And, we fight them in the seas, we fight them on the beaches, we fight them in the hills, we fight them in the valley, we fight them on the plains, we fight them in the cities. That's great, but that's not where we are. We have to, use things that are very effective. I think this chicken coop stuff is really good. We have to pick our spot where the public does not trust us. They think we're old, they think we're urban, they think we're out of ideas. And we can use the opposition as a chance to reintroduce or introduce some of our ideas, and more particularly to introduce the American public to the real talent that exists in the modern Democratic Party, which is formidable.
Yeah, I agree. We haven't gone to some of our international listeners as much recently. So we have Tom up in Toronto. My guess is that Tom has no interest in becoming the 51st state. Sorry, Donald. But he says when push comes to shove, will any Republican Supreme Court justices come down on the side of Democrats? I got to tell you, that scares the living bejesus out of me. There was a case yesterday about whether they were going to basically put down a judge because he issued a ruling against the Trump administration. It's the sort of thing that the Supreme Court never does. But Sam Alito raised a strenuous objection, and three, Kavanaugh and Gorsuch and Thomas, went with him. That was an easy one. I don't think there's anything Trump can do that Sam Alito, Neil Gorsuch, and Clarence Thomas, and Brett Kavanaugh, who is first and foremost a Republican operative and then a Supreme Court justice, there's nothing that they won't go along with if it's in the interest of the Republican Party. So it all depends on, I think Roberts does not want to be in the minority very often. So a lot of it depends on Amy Coney Barrett. And I don't have any idea what she's going to do, James.
Just before the show started, they did say that they couldn't freeze $2 billion in foreign aid spending. I didn't get a chance. I just saw the headline. And Roberts and Barrett, it was a 5-4 decision.
Yeah, but the 4 was kind of incredible.
I know. I agree. Look, I can't tell you what a perilous situation we're in. And then, of course, you had Trump thanking John Roberts on a microphone last night, which would have been unheard of when you were covering American politics, that a president would thank the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. But when you don't believe in the Constitution, separation of powers don't mean anything, and I don't know, but maybe Roberts felt good. Maybe he felt like I got an attaboy. I don't know. I don't know.
He was even warmer with Brett Kavanaugh for Just Cause.
Yeah.
James, our last question, we're going to go back to California. Bob in Morro Bay, California, says the total lack of empathy for the less fortunate seems to be a hallmark of Elon, Trump, and the new tech oligarchs. Is this a new world order that promotes directly or indirectly this kind of version, he says, of genocide, but really it's just of total indifference to people who are struggling?
It might be. It's not a question. And understand things that we would think were untouchable, like veterans benefits. They don't care. All right, they don't care. For some reason, I don't think they have any ability to see another person's life. And, my favorite statistic is from 1965 to 2025, there's still the same number of government employees. All right. And no Democrat should ever say DOGE without saying Elon Musk is DOGE. This guy is making himself unpopular. He's something that is a very important tool in our toolbox to put him front and center, I promise you. But you're right. I don't know if they do. I can't tell you that they see other human beings. I think they're immune from human suffering.
Yeah, I'm afraid you're right. Listen, please keep those letters and emails coming in. They are so good. If we get to 7, that means we're rejecting 17, or we don't get to 17 because we can only do 7, because there are many more that are worth doing. So please send them in again next week. We really do appreciate our listeners out there. So thank you, and we'll be back.
Good deal.
Thanks for listening to Politics War Room with James Carville, and I'm Al Hunt. As always, send your questions for us by email to politicswarroom@gmail.com or tweet them for next week's show @Politicon. Now, following this episode, we'd really appreciate it if you'd check out the links to our sponsors, Magic Spoon, Miracle Made, and Fay Nutrition in our episode show notes. We thank you for supporting them, because when you do, it helps make this podcast happen. Now, to keep up with us, subscribe to Politics War Room on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. And please check out our Substack at politicswarroom.com. James and I are constantly adding new content, so go take a look. You can also find other shows you might enjoy on the Politicon YouTube channel, or when you search Politicon on your favorite podcast sites. Remember, please rate the show with a 5-star review. We'll be back next week with another show as we continue our War Room planning.